Okay, today I'm taking a look at some springs. In this case, these are springs from a 1913 Victrola XVI triple spring motor. 1913 was the first year this particular configuration of a triple spring was used, in that there's a single center arbor shaft. Matter of fact, it's right there. A little screw on the end and a gear. You pop the screw out, the shaft slides out, right out, and all three barrels come off independently. And all three springs are wound in the same direction. Before this, they had a style with a single double barrel with two springs in one barrel and one individual barrel similar to this, and the press fit covers that went into them, no clips. That was a holdover from the earlier days that style of motor was used. This was a simplification to, speed production, speed assembly, all of that. And it worked. It was an improvement, a definite improvement. You see, back in those days when companies improved things, it tended not to be solely for the reason of saving money, but to make it better, to make a better product. And that's what Victor did here. These springs are 1.25" by 17. That's what you got with the premium models. And the 16 is definitely a premium model in 1913. They're getting 3 brand new springs put in here. Not because the springs are broken, just because of what happened the last time I did a Victrola the 16th triple spring motor. In that case, it was a 1912 Eldor, and it's my machine. So I wasn't doing this for anybody else. It was my machine. I decided to be cheap. The springs looked kind of okay. And I figured, I don't feel like spending money on some new springs. I'm just going to pop these ones back in. So I did the full motor service. I cleaned everything, scrubbed everything, took forever, put it all back together, re-greased it all, put it back in the machine, worked once or twice. And then one day when I went to crank it, the crank just spun. Nothing happened. I broke a spring. Damn. Well, I took the motor back out. Now we got a big mess because it's all fresh, nice, gushy grease. And I had to clean it all again. And when I got it cleaned, I discovered I had, in fact, not broken a spring at all. What had happened was, here in the center, the center windings here, they had lost their tension. And they were no longer clamped tightly onto this arbor bushing here. Now, what happens here is there is a pin that comes off of this that engages with the spring. And when you crank it down, it just locks the spring there. So the spring is turning and winding as you crank. Here's an example. This is the new spring. You can see the pear-shaped hole in the center there. That is what that little pin goes into and holds in place. And you can see that's pretty tight there in the middle. It's spring tension. It's pretty tight. I can't really fit my finger in it. Over here you can see the arbor bushing is considerably bigger, than the hole here. And you can see it's already starting to come loose. It's not binding tightly onto that bushing. None of them really are. Some are worse than others. You can see it's a little bit loose. It has been for a while. This one's really loose. This is the one that would eventually fail, sooner or later. And it probably will fail because I have to take this apart to clean them. I'm going to have to stretch this out a little bit, open it up to get the arbor bushing out. And sure enough, what do you think is going to happen? When I go to put that back on, the tension is not going to want to go back. It's going to stay a little bit, sprung out, and sooner or later it will come loose. Just like it did on the last Victrola the 16th. It did. It's gotten to the point now, I have found so many of these that are loose like that in the center, losing their tension, that I just replaced this style of spring as a matter of course. This is the style with the pear-shaped hole on the outside and in the middle. Pins on both ends. They work fine. They're not better or worse than the bent end ones or hooked end ones, just different. But you have to be aware that they depend on the center windings there having spring tension. It's over 100 years later. Chances are that spring tension is going to be getting very weak, especially considering when you wind the spring up, it winds down tight onto that shaft. So this is taking the most abuse. So it's going to lose its tension faster than other parts of the spring will. So I've just begun replacing all of these with brand new springs whenever I do it. I just did a 1910 Victrola, the 11th tabletop model. And that has a 2-spring motor. And sure enough, I found one of these springs where that center winding was about to pop right off the arbor shaft. Right off of it. It was very loose. Still holding, but not for much longer. So if I had done something stupid like tried to reuse it, what would have happened? Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even next week or next month, but sooner or later, that would have popped off of there and I would have to do it again. I don't want to have to touch this motor except for basic maintenance for another 25 years, by which time I'm sure I will be on the other side. So it'll be somebody else's problem. Done once, do it once and forget about it. Just add oil and such on, grease to the gears, and don't worry about anything else. That's my philosophy on these. Do it once. And that's what's happening here. This is going to get scrubbed and scrubbed. As you can see how dirty it is. Those are probably original springs, or at least Victor springs. And everything's all dry in there. And this is what causes your thump and bump right there. You can see there's no visibly wet lubrication left in there anymore. Just dried out grease. That's it. The remnants of dried out black graphite grease. That's all that's there. And that will cause the spring to stick and then suddenly release, causing the bum, 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 bum you hear on your motor when it hasn't been properly serviced in 100 years. And the only way to fix it is to do what I'm doing here, which is to remove those springs from the barrels, clean everything very thoroughly, reassemble it with fresh grease and oil. There's just no other way around it. You have to do it that way. There's no easy fix here. Even if you were to just open the lids and squirt some oil, and I know some of you have done that, just squirt some fresh oil in there and hope for the best, really doesn't. Because that stuff in there is so dried out, there's probably going to be some rust in there too. It's going to continue to be a problem. You don't want to do that. You want to do it right, or have it done right. But there you go. There's a little cautionary tale on dealing with this style of spring. And it's not better or worse now than the later ones, which had a hooked end out here and a bent end in the middle, and one intermediate one, which was a pear-shaped hole here and a bent end in the middle. Between those three styles, this, that, and the other two, those are all of the Victor Spring styles. Not better or worse, just different. But you have to be aware of their weak points, and that center winding is definitely one of them. All right, there you go. That's our lesson for the day.